Hey girl, let's talk crime. So tonight we will be discussing the murder of 16-year-old Molly Ann Bish. So Molly was born on August 2nd, 1983 in Massachusetts. Now prior to her being born, her older siblings and her parents, Maggie and John, had lived in Detroit. This is where her mother was from, and her father had met her at a college, I believe. And so at some point while they were living there, there was an 18-year-old that was pregnant in their neighborhood. She was abducted, raped, and killed. And so Maggie and John had decided that they did not want to raise their children there. And so they ended up moving to Warren, Massachusetts, which is where John is from. And now this is a community that was described as one that you could leave your doors open at night, had less than 5,000 people, and they just felt that it would be more safe for their children to be raised up in that environment. And so at this time, she had had two older siblings, and then Molly was born on August 2nd. So now we are going to fast forward 15 years, and it is the year 2000, and her older siblings, Heather and John Jr., had already gone off to college. Molly is now 16, had just finished her junior year of high school. She has dreams of working with children. However, this summer she has just landed her official first job as a lifeguard at Cummins Pond. So Cummins Pond was an area that was used locally for swimming lessons for children, but also a lot of the residents would come there and kind of chill, like throughout the summer and things of that nature. Molly was really excited because she worked really hard to get her certification. Her parents were very proud of her. They were a little bit worried as the pond was kind of isolated and surrounded by woods, but they were still very proud of her achievement as becoming a lifeguard. June 19th is the first day of Molly's shift as a lifeguard. And how it was set up was she would work and she would start around 10 a.m. And for the first 20 minutes or so, prior to people arriving to chill or hang out or even do swimming lessons, she would be there by herself setting up. And that was no different for June 27th. So her mother, Maggie, had taken her to her job at the pond. This was around 9:58 a.m. So she had gotten out of the car. They had said their I love yous. And Molly headed toward the shed to get all of her equipment. Now, not long after that, the first people had arrived. It was a woman and her two children. And they had noticed that no lifeguard was there. They saw that her first aid kit was there, her backpack, her radio, her sandals, and even her lunch, but they did not see Molly anywhere. About an hour later, Molly's manager arrived and saw that she was not there. This was not something typical that Molly would do, as she was very dependable and responsible. At 11:44, he did call the police, and by 1 p.m., he reached out to her mother and stated that she had not been there all day. And then, of course, she did rush over to the pond. So initially, the police were thinking that she may have just abandoned her job for the day, went off with friends, went off with her boyfriend, and her family was saying that she would never do anything like that. She was very responsible. And then they had assumed that she had drowned in the pond. Again, this was something that they were not convinced of because they said that Molly was an excellent swimmer. And so they did begin searching the area within 7 miles. This did become one of the largest and most kind of extensive searches of Massachusetts for a missing person. And so as all of this is happening during the search, then something that happened just the day before, Maggie remembered. So the day before, they had come to the pond to drop Molly off, and Maggie stated that they were kind of alarmed at the fact that there was already someone there, because usually it was just her mother and Molly in the mornings when she was dropping Molly off. So it was like a middle-aged man. He had a mustache and he was smoking a cigarette. And so Maggie did say that it gave her like this really uneasy feeling. And so she walks her daughter down to the pond area. And when she comes back, the man is still sitting there smoking a cigarette. And so she just kind of stares at him just to let him know, like, hey, I see you. I know who you are, hoping that that would make him want to leave. He did not leave. He stared back at her, and she said that he gave her like this kind of squinty look. And then eventually he did leave. And so after he left, then her mother left. And so on this day, June 27th, when they arrived, that man or no one else was there that looked suspicious. But there was a truck there that was unloading sand. And so her mother said that she did feel comfortable leaving Molly there, thinking that this man from yesterday was kind of just somebody hanging out and wasn't going to be back. So then the investigation kind of focused on this man that was there on the 26th. And so a sketch was done. She described, his white car, and then this was released to the public. A few witnesses did come forward about that morning. One said that there was a white car that was there prior to Maggie and Molly arriving. The gentleman that was unloading sand said that he did see a white car that day as well. And then there is a cemetery that is connected to the pond, like through a path area. And one of the employees there said that they had saw a white car that evening as well, or that morning as well. So then her father had kind of came up with the idea that maybe this person had parked at the cemetery and then walked to the pond, abducted Molly, and by forcing her to walk back to the cemetery and then taking her. And so also there was someone else that had stated that they had heard a scream around the time that Molly had disappeared. And even though they had kind of set up roadblocks and all of these things, they still did not have any leads or kind of know where to go. And so at that point, they had sent out a bunch of emails. Remember, this is in 2000, and over 35,000 people had received this image of Molly along with other photos. And then these missing persons posters were made as well. After some time, there was no leads, no tips coming in about Molly's case. And so her mother did not want the traction to stop. And so she did reach out to a sketch artist who had worked with other people and other cases. And then she had created this sketch along with the cigarette. And Maggie said that this looked exactly like the man that day in the white car. And so then this sketch was released as well. About 2 years later, there was a hunter who had found a bathing suit on Whiskey Hill in the woods. This area is about 5 miles away from the pond where Molly was last seen. Now, he had assumed that the bathing suit that she had on was orange, and so he did not make a mention of this until about a year later, where he told someone else who thought she had a blue bathing suit on. I think that this could have been Molly. And then he did reach out to the police. So authorities did search this area, and they ended up finding about 20 human bones. And through DNA in June 2003, they were identified as belonging to 16-year-old Molly Ann Bish. And on what would have been Molly's 20th birthday, she was laid to rest on August 2nd, 2003. So her death was ruled a homicide. However, there was not a cause. Investigators do believe that she was murdered and then buried in a shallow grave where then her remains were scattered by animals. So there were quite a few people of interest in the murder of Molly Bish. So this man, Robert Stenger, was a person of interest, as he had lived not far away from the YMCA where Molly had taken her classes. And then he was also known to fish in the pond where Molly worked. And then about a year after her disappearance, he did move to Florida. Now, he was ultimately also convicted of murdering his girlfriend, and then he was questioned on murdering another girl. Forensic evidence did lead them to another man named David, but he did die in 2003, but he was a person of interest as well. Another person that they were looking at is this man, Frank Sumner Sr. There were tips that were coming in about him. He does have a crazy criminal record. He was convicted of aggravated rape and kidnapping. However, in 2016, he did die without being questioned. As of today, Molly's case is still open and active. A $100,000 reward has been offered, leading to an arrest.